1070 The Fan coming up on Facebook Live shortly.
I love that intro. How about that?
That's fancy.
Joey Mulinaro, Kevin Bowen, live here from the Indiana Farm Bureau Football Center where Quenton Nelson, newest member of the Indianapolis Colts. Joey, what were your initial thoughts?
You know, it was kind of funny because I felt like once Denzel Ward got picked at 4, there was a lot of excitement feeling like
Chubb.
Bradley Chubb's going to be the guy.
Yeah.
But overall, I think that a lot of people are happy with Nelson coming back to Indy.
The unquestioned biggest need on this roster really over the past 6-7 years, ever since Andrew Luck came into the NFL. There's been swings and misses in the draft from Hugh Thornton to Colin Holmes. Free agency-wise, there's been swings and misses as well. So I think it was kind of a no-brainer almost that we call this a safe pick, Joey. And I feel like it's such a negative word to use. It is really safe. But this is a guy that we're talking about maybe the best guard in years, multiple decades.
And Chris Ballard and Frank Reich really put in a lot of emphasis in their press conference about building up front.
Yes.
On both sides of the ball, but they were not shying away about that.
And that's something they talked about at the Combine. I remember being down there in February, and they were adamant that it was so critical to rebuild through the trenches. And now you get a guy like Nelson who brings that nasty, brings that mean streak. When you guys hear him talk tomorrow when he meets the media, he doesn't say much, but he just plays with a presence that I think Chris Ballard wants on this football team. His just kind of football intelligence and his football character was something that Ballard talked about. Nelson is a guy right now, when you look at the guard position in the NFL, Joey, we just saw Andrew Norwell in free agency get gobs of money, and you think of the Fletcher Coxes, the Aaron Donalds, the Gerald McCoys. You need interior linemen in a similar realm to what you pay for offensive tackles. So I know guard in the top 10 is very rare. I think he's only the third or fourth to be taken there in the last decade or so. But this is a guy that I think certainly fills a need and not only patches it up, but he completely shuts that need for quite some time.
We've talked about it on Kevin's Corner a lot about how if Nelson was going to be the guy, that kind of solidifies even more about the health of Andrew Luck, right? Got to feel even better about it now?
Correct, yeah. And trading back from 3 to 6, Nelson, you could have gotten Chubb at 3. Yeah. But, I think there was a debate all along. And Chris Ballard mentioned this in the presser. He just got done with us. Saquon Barkley, Bradley Chubb, Quenton Nelson. Those 3 we've talked about all along. Those were the Colts 3. At least that's the vibe that I get from Chris Ballard. And I think when you move back to 6, that certainly was good on the Andrew Luck front, health-wise. Right. And now you're getting a player in there at guard, and when you look at your left side of your line, Anthony Costanzo left tackle, Quenton Nelson at left guard, Ryan Kelly at center, you feel really good, I think, about those 3 spots there. And now, of course, you have some options on the right side with, Matt Slauson coming in, Jack Mewhort, where does Joe Haig, Denzel Good, some of those guys fit into the mix as well. One thing I did want to mention, Joey, is kind of talking about Chris Ballard, and when he got on the clock there at 6, said there was one trade call, but Nelson was the prospect that really stood out. Okay. And what confirmed that was going back and seeing Nelson at the pro day. Mm-hmm. The only pro day that he went to was...
That was funny, I thought.
And he kind of joked with us, well, it's an easy drive. Right. And Chris Ballard joked that, it's been a very eventful offseason. Yeah. So he's been needed in this building. But Ballard watched Nelson live twice in the past 2 years. Miami game back in 2016. Not the Miami game this year where Notre Dame got blown off the offensive line all day long.
What hurt his cause.
Definitely, yeah. And then the NC State game this past year up in South Bend, which, of course, was one that Bradley Chubb played in. And Mike McGlinchey, Notre Dame's left tackle, who you saw just get taken by 49ers?
Yeah, 9.
49ers at 9. That was the big matchup. But NC State has some other guys on that defensive line. And so Nelson, of course, gave Ballard that impression then. And then it was confirmed at the pro day where Ballard talked about you just have this feeling watching Nelson. He compared it to watching Adrian Peterson.
Right.
At Adrian Peterson's pro day back in, 07-ish, I guess, when Ballard would have been. Yeah, I mean, that's high praise when you talk about those guys. And for an offensive guard, to have that sort of presence.
Right.
What else?
Oh, that's what I was about to ask. I mean, Frank Reich spoke a little bit. It was mostly Chris Ballard. A lot of confirmation from Frank Reich and just that him and it was just good news for Colts fans after what's going on this offseason, but that him and Chris Ballard really were on the same page throughout with this pick.
And that goes back again to what they said at the Combine. I mean, they were in such cohesion on you have to build through the front. You have to do this. You know, there were times where Chris Ballard, I think, threw up a smoke screen about, you know, liking the interior offensive line depth in this draft class. But when you show up to the guy's pro day, you know, maybe that is something. And Frank Reich mentioned when he first popped in the film on Nelson, I mean, he was like, whoa. Like, I haven't seen an offensive lineman like this in quite some time. And we talk about Andrew Luck, Joey. I mean, that's a $140 million man. And how many games? I mean, what? He missed, you know, all 16 last year. You know, he missed, 9, I think, in 2016. He missed 1 in 20...
9 in 2015,
1 in 2016, all of them last year in 2017. So you start adding those up, that's 23, 24 games, 25 games that he's missed in the past 3 years.
Yep.
I think that is why it was so important to make sure that if you're going to address this need, do it in a serious manner. The Colts did not do that in free agency. It was just Matt Slauson and Jack Mueller on those 1-year deals, and that's why I felt like Nelson was more in play. I was kind of torn between him and Roquan Smith these past few days. I thought Nelson initially, you and I broke down some of those quarterback scenarios, and what ended up happening? 2 in the first 5 picks?
Yeah, Mayfield and Darnold.
Mm-hmm. And then Denzel Ward was a surprise.
Jeez, yeah.
And so that pushed Nelson down, and he was the pick there at 6. And now I think as you move forward in this draft, you look at those second-round picks, Joey. Pass rusher,
right.
Wideout, defensive tackle, running back. I mean, those are kind of the 4 at the forefront of my mind. Linebacker, middle linebacker still in there as well.
Right, and Chris Ballard, he made a point to say that I know that people are going to want those skill players. They're going to want those guys, those playmakers. He kind of reassured you that they're coming.
They are.
They had to take care up front before they get to the rest of what they need to take care of.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't think of Quenton Nelson as a fantasy football player, certainly, but he impacts what the Colts want to do every Sunday. A couple things I want to mention, too, before we sign off, Joey. Chris Ballard talked about how he had a connection with Harry Heastan, Nelson's position coach at Notre Dame, who, ironically enough, is now the position coach in Chicago on the offensive line. Heastan has an NFL background, I think was in Chicago, actually with Ballard back, about a decade or so ago. And so that is when he first was introduced to Quenton Nelson, who's a 3-year starter at left guard at Notre Dame. And this quote right here, Joey, I wanted to read from Quenton Nelson at the Combine. Again, a man of few words, but I think fans will find him kind of funny in just how serious of a tone he has and just how kind of funny some of these comments sounds. But here was Nelson at the Combine. As a blocker, my mindset is being dominant. I want to dominate all my opponents and take their will away to play the game by each play and finishing them past the whistle.
This guy doesn't like pancakes for breakfast. He's talking pancake blocks.
100%. And that is kind of what Ballard talked about when he said he wants that football character to really spread out throughout that offensive line room and this entire team. So, anything else, Joey?
Well, I was about to ask, then we heard a little bit from Quenton Nelson.
Yeah.
Post-pick, anything from what he had to say in that conference call stand out to you?
He was shocked by it. He didn't think he'd go as high as, some people were even talking about top 5 for him. I know Nelson didn't really agree with that, which is kind of funny to hear him.
Number 2 to New York.
Publicly admit that, but we heard that, But he was surprised, and that's something that's similar to kind of Ryan Kelly when he was picked a few years ago. He didn't have a lot of contact with the Colts. Yes, he talked to Googs, the O-line coach, at the pro day, and Chris Ballard as well.
Finally figured out his name.
Yes, exactly. Simple. Keep it simple. But yeah, I'm trying to think, he watched the draft at his family's lake house here in Indiana. He said that he's from New Jersey. He said that his parents will be going to Notre Dame games still and then driving down for Colts games on Sunday. Trying to think of what else stood out from him. I mean, we'll have plenty of content on 1070thefan.com, obviously.
I think the biggest thing, just to me, as an outsider's perspective, as you and other media folks were asking him questions, is just I really got the sense that this fan base, this town is really going to come to like Quenton Nelson. And a lot of them probably already do, being a Notre Dame guy.
Right.
But the more they get to know him, and like you mentioned, his mindset and how he approaches the game, they're going to dig this guy.
No ego off the field whatsoever, but
Right.
when he's on the field, he plays with a swagger that this team has lacked, and I think is an absolute must to add. So the box is checked for me with Quenton Nelson at 6. And now I don't expect the Colts to trade back into the first round here in the final hour and a half or so of tonight's first round. But we'll have plenty of coverage, 1070thefan.com. Social channels, obviously, and KBowen1070 on Twitter for 8 more picks for the Colts here in 2018.
I was going to say, tomorrow night gets even busier. Rounds 2? Just 2 or 2 and 3?
2 and 3.
2 and 3 tomorrow. All right. Kevin's Corner, KBowen1070, Joey Mulinaro.
See you guys.